Yo, what's up, everybody? Here with my buddy Mark, all the way from Brisbane, Australia, right? No, Melbourne, Melbourne. What am
You
I
got
saying?
it. Brisbane. You got it.
Brisbane, but you live in Melbourne. Anyway,
No,
um,
well, just Brisbane. Yeah.
okay, okay,
I've
cool.
been to Melbourne.
Oh man, I'm like, I was going to go like, yeah, I've known Mark for years. Like, I don't even know where you fucking live. Anyway, Australian
Shows how
bloke.
well you know me. Yep.
Yeah, yeah.
The
You know
massive
what?
continent, it's all the same stuff,
There's
Brisbane,
like three
Melbourne, Perth,
cities.
Cairns.
There's Sydney,
Yeah,
Brisbane, and
just
Melbourne,
a
and
few.
I guess Perth. So there's like literally four cities. The rest is uninhabitable, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, pretty much. Yep, that's pretty much how it goes here.
Same as Canada,
We
though. We have
batted.
Vancouver, Toronto, Calgary, and like Montreal. And I live in like
Yep.
the the sticks, basically. But anyway,
The rest. Yep.
enough of this rambling, bro. Um, yeah, I wanted to have you on here. I think I've known you since like 2016, 2017. We initially met in like an entrepreneur group. It was like pretty early on in my kind of like entrepreneur journey. And we kind of, stayed in touch ever since then. Yeah, I'll let you introduce yourself and kind of like what you're up to, and
Hi,
we
so
can dive
yeah, I'm
into it.
Mark from Melbourne, Brisbane, Perth, Cairns, you name it. I'm from Australia. So I've been doing entrepreneurship for quite a long time, very, very long time. And in that, I did a little bit of sales. I'm nowhere near Ben's level, but I focus on self-development. And at the time, I did a lot of what people would know face-to-face dating, day game. I've done it for about 11 years now. I don't really like that term day game. I just like meeting
Meeting
people in everyday
women that you
life.
don't know,
Yeah,
walking around. Yeah,
yeah,
which
pretty
most
much.
guys would never have the balls to do. So what I like about your
Yep.
stuff, when you were posting a lot of content, I know you kind of like
Mm,
don't post as much anymore, but
yep.
besides like the hardcore tactics, like you could probably talk tactics all day, but your mindset,
Yeah.
your discipline, your self development, all this stuff is really great. And I think there's a lot of parallels between what you do in sales and business. And I thought, why not chop it up with you?
Well, there's a huge element between sales and dating, and people often know rejection comes with sales, a lot of it. And you would know, you've probably done the hardest form of sales, and I've experimented with it a few weeks, door-to-door sales. People will
Yeah.
often just give up after a day, if that. And yeah, after I guess discovered this online, like guys just going up and just meeting women to speak to them, having a conversation with them, asking them out. I got into like this little group where I was, and I realized that most guys have never done this, or if they do it, they give up after a week or two. They
Yeah.
may decide to go out for about a month, but then after that, they lose motivation. But I like the mindset behind it all to always keep going. I like the self-discipline aspect, and I think that overlaps into sales a lot.
Yeah. And just business in general, like I've seen so many
Yeah,
people say they want to start a business, and then their first sign of resistance, they're like, I guess it's not for me. This is too hard. Fuck this. And then they just
yeah,
quit. Like I have my take on it with the dating and the business thing. It's like your ego can't take not getting your way or something like that. And like, I don't know. Like what are your
yeah.
thoughts just around that?
Rejection will destroy your ego, your what do you call it? It will really, really break it away. And people think that I just go out and just do just this because I want to get heaps of dates, I want to be with heaps of women.
You're
That's
just a horny
maybe
bastard.
5% of it. Yeah, that's pretty much what people think. But to
Yeah.
me, the beautiful thing about it is facing fear every single day. I don't do it
Yeah.
just for that sake. Because when I'm going out and you see someone which you find really attractive or interesting or someone which really intrigues you, this fear will overcome your body and you feel like you're paralyzed. And most guys deal with this, which is why they don't do it for very long. But as soon as that fear rises in my body, I have to do it. And that's the self-discipline aspect. And I use that in a shift into my business, into my work, into my family, in every single life, in every single
Mm.
area of life. So fear behind that, the beauty behind that is amazing. And when you push yourself to a certain limit, you break through these mental barriers which have been holding you back through all your areas of life, and you hit the ceiling. And maybe when we can go into it, it's called flow state. And once you experience
Yeah,
that, you
bro.
feel that, and you know what that feels like. It's something. it sort of
It's
like
addictive.
elevates your mood. Yeah, it's addictive. You need more. It's like doing. I've never really done drugs myself, but when you do drugs, you elevate all those hormones, those chemicals. It's doing
Yeah.
that, and you multiplying that. And to me, when you get that taste of success, and you realize that you can break your own fears, your own worries, your own doubts, and you can achieve something which you didn't think was possible.
Yeah.
That's what I want more of, and I constantly want more of it.
Mm. Yeah, because once you prove that it's like, oh wow, I did something in this one area of life that I didn't think was possible. What
Mm.
else could I do? That's what happened to me because
Yep.
I before I got into sales and business and all that stuff, I got into like pickup for maybe 2 years and self development, let's just call it, but really pickup because I was
Yeah.
like single and stuff, and I wanted a new girlfriend, and I didn't really have the skills to like meet chicks, so I just fell down that rabbit hole, and that's what gave me the confidence to go into sales. I'm like, well, I got good enough at this, and like before, I would never consider myself a salesperson. In fact, that's why I was in engineering when I found out about that whole world because I I'm like, well, I won't have to do any type of sales or anything like that. I can just be like this introverted nerd guy and just do engineering
Hmm.
stuff. And it kind of broke me out of my shell. Like I really do attribute a lot of like where I'm at today from the skills that I learned back then. And it's funny, like
Hmm.
when you said the whole fear thing, dude, when I got started in door to door sales, like yeah, there was fear. But what I noticed is like as you push your comfort zone, so I did that for I don't know, maybe 6 months. And then I got into freelance copywriting. And then I stopped door to door sales, obviously. I'm like, well, maybe I can just get clients from like emailing them and stuff like that. And at one point in 2017, I think I bought Ty Lopez's like social media marketing agency course. I'm like, how am I
Hmm.
going to get clients for this? And I remember asking my dad, and he's like, well, why don't you go hand out flyers? I'm like, hand out flyers, like door to door. I'm like, I guess. But my comfort zone had like shrunk back down. So I remember
Yep.
I had these flyers and I was like, okay, all I have to do is go in there and like hand it to the person. And I'd be standing outside the business for like 10 minutes. It's like, ah, fuck. I'm
Hmm.
like, no, not this feeling again, bro.
Yep, it always comes back, and it's the same when it comes to dating. You have to always keep going out there, and whether it's rejection in sales or rejection in dating, like doesn't mean you can't ever be with someone forever or long term. But once you get out of it for about 3 or 4 months, those mental limitations,
Yeah.
those blocks will kick back in. And I've had that for about 3 or 4 months. I haven't gone out consistently, just because I was seeing someone seriously at the time.
Yeah.
And you go out, and you like, I know the information. I've done this 1,000 times before. I know what I'm doing. I know how to do it, where the conversation is going to be going, what we'll talk about. But that initial fear will always come back up. If you don't learn to keep self-disciplining you and face that fear as often as possible, it will keep rising back up and keep coming back.
Yeah. You know, one thing I think that there's a parallel between like dating and sales, especially that you
Mm.
mentioned. It's like when you talk to guys, like I'm sure a lot of them come to you and they're like, well, just tell me what to say. Like
Yeah.
what's the pickup line or like what are some like opening lines or something like that. But in reality, like you could give them I don't know, let's say like the perfect like this line works 10, like 98% of the time, let's just say that existed,
Mm.
but they still can't get themselves to do it. Like you give someone a sales script, perfect sales script, you know, whatever, but it's like they have blockages for them to ask like certain questions, like oh, like it's like uncomfortable to ask certain questions which get people into pain, for example, or like a consequence question, like what's going to happen if you don't change this. Like a lot of people can't even bring themselves to ask those questions because there's some type of like blockage in their personality or in their emotions or something like that.
This is a perfect segue. I love that. And there's these guys which I used to meet up with, and they were thinking about doing, they've read about, game and all this other dating shit for like 6 months continuously. They've read every single piece of information, watched
Yeah,
every single video, and I gave them, all the confidence to go out. And we go out, and these guys, they were like, well, if I don't have my looks, my health, my body fat percentage exactly the right amount, they got it all up and got it there. And like,
yeah,
well, they're going to reject me. No, no girls want to talk to me. And these guys had everything going for them, every single way possible. And then
yeah.
when we go out and I say, okay, go speak to her, and they completely freeze. And I think it's
Mm,
a lot of self-sabotage, and it's actually the fear of success. you can give them all the perfect things which they want, especially for like a sales script. But then you say, okay, it's a perfect sales script. You know what to sell. You know, all your objections. And then you say, oh, to do is call someone now. And their first phone call, they call someone, they freeze up.
Yeah. Do you think like a fear of success? It's like they've been a loser for so long, for example, or they've been broke for so long that just the thought of them suddenly leveling up their life, that's what's blocking them, or something else.
Potentially. I mean, when you've known nothing else and that's what you always want. And I think it's also the expectations because they think that as soon as they get that, they're going to have no, well, almost no rejections. They think they're going to make all the money. They can make any single sale. They know they're all the right things. But then
Yeah.
as soon as that call answers and with someone they speak to, then it all goes blank and goes empty.
Yeah. That's the other
Yeah.
thing too. Like what I found is some people will, let's say they'll get a certain objection and you can tell them exactly how to handle it. You practice
Mhm.
it with them. You spend all this time role playing, and still, when it comes up on the call, it still stumps you. And you're like, "What the fuck?"
Yep.
Like, bro, you know what to say. Why aren't you just saying, what we trained on? It's like there's
Hmm.
some type of weird blockage there with people,
Yep.
which is
I
where I
think it
think
all comes down. Yeah. Sorry, keep going.
I was just gonna say I think like that's where a lot of it comes. It's not just like what you say, but it's a lot of the internal work.
Yep. Self-worth. And you got it. I think a lot of it comes down to self-worth. And to me, I mean, I could write a script for a guy when it comes to dating, what to say, how to say it, which demographic, how old they are, where they're from, which language, what to say. But people get very confused because when I do go out and I do it, I've been doing it for so long, people find it very confusing to see that I'm not rehearsing anything. I'm extremely relaxed. I'm calm. It looks
Yeah,
like after 5 minutes that I've had a conversation with them and I've known it for like six lifetimes. And then
yeah,
after that, they see me walk off and get coffee, and they're so bamboozled because they have all these things written down, what to say, how to do it, where to go, what to do, all that kind of
yeah,
stuff. And I'm just, yeah, very relaxed in that moment.
bro. That's it's funny that you say that. It reminds me. I like when you go up and talk to somebody, it seems like you've always known them.
Mm,
I remember when I would go with some of my friends who were just like they weren't into that stuff, and I would be trying to get them to talk to girls with me, and so I would go over to like a table full of girls, and I'd be like, "Hey, what's up?" Da, 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 to start talking to them, and I would go back to my friend. I'm like, "Oh, I know that girl from school," and that would allow him to come over and start talking to these chicks. And then like half an hour later,
mm,
so it was like, "How do you know Ben?" And the girl would inevitably be like, "I don't. Like we just met tonight." And he'd be like, "What the fuck?" It would
hmm.
always like blow his mind. But what you said
Yep.
there about being relaxed, I think is the key, because I've heard it said that like the biggest enemy to like social skills is tension, internal tension.
Mhm.
So how do you get
Of
yourself
course.
to relax? Is it just a matter of reps? Do you have like a meditation that you do? Like, do you have a trigger in your mind that you're like,
Um,
it's no big deal, it's just talking? Like,
for me, I'm so used to doing it now. If I speak to someone, I just feel myself calm down. Being social is how I relax into it. And for me, it's a matter of
interesting.
reps, yeah. And I know where the conversation is going to be going. It's also familiarity.
Yeah.
Yeah, for a lot of people, like they have other reasons, like they're introverted, they're afraid of, rejection or what people think about them. I think what it comes down to is that I hate to sound, don't want to sound arrogant saying this, but I really don't give a shit what people think about me. It gets to the point
Yeah.
like I've been rejected over, like if you do the basic maths, I've had probably over 25,000 rejections.
Hmm.
So I just don't really give a shit. It doesn't bother me, and I don't want to say like I'm superior and better or someone better than someone else. But when you have that many rejections, where the conversation's going, there's only so many things which they can reply to or say. They can just brush you
Yeah.
off, and same with sales, and just be like, "No, don't want to talk. Sorry, bye." It's like, cool, next person. So
Yeah, man.
yeah, for me, it's about reps, and it's also about facing that fear. That's what really gets me going.
Hmm. In sales, it's the same thing. There's only so many things that they can say. Like, if I say this thing, it's like in my mind, there's like a path. They could say this, which would lead to this and this and this, or they could say this, and it's almost like I'm not sure if you've ever read the Choose Your Own Adventure books. It's like,
Yes,
oh,
I
you're
remember them.
walking down the forest. If you want to go into the cave, like turn to page 90. If you go at the fork in the road and go right, turn to page 186.
Choose
And
page
then,
9. Yep.
yeah, you're like, okay, I'm going into the cave. And it's like, oh, you were killed by like a big spider. You're like, ah, fuck. Next time you're like, all right, I'm going right. And it's like, okay, now you come up to a wizard. It's like, do you give him like a sack of gold or do you like call him an asshole? Like, I'm going to give him the gold.
Hmm.
He's like, he turns him into a frog or something.
Hmm.
You're like, ah, fuck.
That's
And like, eventually
pretty,
you're like, oh, okay,
yeah,
like this is exactly how I handle every single situation. And it's like reference experiences, the same as in sales.
exactly. And that's what it comes down to. But people have to go get over that initial fear of having to mess up and screw up. Because so many people, when it comes to sales, especially, they are so afraid of getting rejected on the call or coming across as too pushy or too salesy.
Yeah.
Or what they do is they look up a mentor and they think that to be like Grant Cardone or some of these
Yeah.
iconic salesmen. Yeah.
It's one thing that I think probably plays into it is when you just have like a scarcity of leads, let's say, like when you're trying to run your own business. I mean, you might be sending like cold emails. Like I know a lot of guys, they'll send like thousands of cold emails a day and they'll book calls, but let's say you only have one call a week. You're like, I need this one to
Mhm.
work versus
Yep.
you're like, well, there's like endless amounts of like pretty girls out there. I'll just talk to the next one, whatever.
Mhm.
This chick wasn't into me. So maybe that's part of it too.
Yeah, and I think abundance, but also this might segue a bit into spirituality, whereas I think you can possibly be aware of spiritual concepts and being aware of, positive affirmations, whatever it may be. But I think sometimes spirituality is used as an excuse. It's used as this spiritual junk in your mind, which actually hinders you more than helps you.
You think? You're
Well,
like,
I
oh yeah,
mean,
I could actually. I reminds me of one of my clients. I won't like name names, but
yeah.
we were talking, and I coach people in sales, but also I like a lot of sales coaching is like coaching them on life. And I'm like, well, tell me about your life, bro. And he told me that he's like, it's been like 2 or 3 years since he was like with a girl. I was like, bro, like
Mhm.
this is like a major area that you have to handle. And he's like, no, like I gotta focus on making money. I gotta like hustle, da da da, like all this stuff. And that is to me is like spiritual bypassing. It's like, well, no, like this is definitely like an area because it's something that comes up in our conversations. Like you must be
Mhm.
looping on it, and by you like not wanting to face that part of your life, I mean like sales, dating, it's one thing to have in common. It's not just what you say, but it's like who you are. Like, are you a well
Yeah.
balanced person, or is there like some weird like the girl could sense like if you're like a weirdo, or there's like
Mhm.
something you have some weird tensions. Like, what's up with this guy? You know. But if you're like, hey, what's up?
The
And you're just like
same.
normal, relaxed,
Yeah.
it's the exact same.
What I've said is that, especially when it comes to sales, being authentic, and which is what I believe in, saying what you are thinking, what you believe, being having integrity, having your own personal goals. If you don't
Yeah,
have that, you're going to come across as strange, too pushy. You're going to come across as really weird. And a lot of salespeople
yeah,
are very weird people, especially
yeah,
if they haven't been doing it for too long and they try and, just close a sale. The same with dating. Like people just get a little bit too pushy, too creepy, or the
yeah.
opposite, people just run away at the sign of rejection. Like, oh, it's 12:30, and they think, okay, that's a rejection, I have to go now. But in terms of like spirituality, I mean, like some people take it too seriously. Like I think, well, it has to be Mercury retrograde. That means my energy's not perfect right now. So the Earth has to shift at 45
Yeah,
degrees and my
yeah,
111 angel numbers. Those kind of people, yeah, they look too far
yeah.
into it. So as you said, maybe spiritual bypass is a term, but they use all these things which actually hinder them more than helping them. And I think, yeah, you can get familiar with your chakras, your energy, meditation, all those kind of things. But as long as you aren't using those as excuses to hold back from actually taking action, because I believe
Mhm.
in the law of attraction and the law of action. Without one or the other,
They
it's
go
just going to
together, of
be,
course.
yeah.
One
Mhm.
thing I find interesting is a lot of people they live in this like self-imposed reality where it's like I must work hard. The harder I work, that's how I get the results. But in dating, sometimes it's like the opposite. It's like the more relaxed I am, the more I don't care. the better
Mm,
results I get. So it's like it's one of the interesting things about dating. There's not much of a more freeing feeling than be able to like express yourself 100%, just put yourself completely out there, say whatever's on your mind. Because in
mm,
most situations, like in business and stuff, you can't have that. It's like you don't get to really bring that part of you out. And I just like a quick like funny story. I remember when I first started working on Cole Gordon's team, the guy who was training me was this guy named Jared. He was like a young kid, but like you don't want to talk about like not giving a fuck. I remember like I was like shadowing him and he was calling leads, and this guy would text him. He's like, the guy was like taking a dump. He's like, dude, I'm taking a shit. And Jared's like, bro, like just like let's just talk right now. And he just called him up while the guy was like taking a shit, and he ended up like
mm.
setting him. And Jared's like, I don't give a fuck, man.
Yeah.
Like, fuck it.
Uh,
And but he had that energy, and the guy was like a business owner, and he like they respect it. It's like, yeah, it's weird. Right? It's
mhm. They'd call that
but
congruence in dating. Yeah.
mm, yeah,
So,
congruence is huge.
yeah, the better you get when it comes to interactions, when it comes to conversations and connections, when it comes to dating or sales, is being really, really consistent, congruent with who you are, what you think, and what you believe.
Yeah.
Because the thing is, especially when it comes to sales, is that people are actually looking for things to say no to. They're going in a way to see little holes in your personality, any excuse for them to back out of it, especially if they're usually going to buy. From what I've understood, I could be wrong about that, but most people they will be like, well, his sales is different from last time. He changed his price. Last time he said he believed in this time. He's just bullshitting me to tell me what I want to hear so I can get a sale. Is just making up your stories. So when you're very congruent, you're very relaxed, you stick with everything, there's less reasons for people to either reject you in sales or dating.
Mm, yeah. I mean, that is definitely true, man. Like most people are looking for like the holes in the armor or something like that. It's like
Mm,
the gaps in in you or your pitch or your business. That's interesting. When you talk about congruence, the biggest thing for me is like when you're making content. I know people ask me, how do I make more content? How do I shoot better videos? And that's one of the first things I always say. Like, you just have to be congruent. Like, you don't like, put on this like fake persona. Like, I'm going to be Grant Cardone. Hey, like 10x, bro. Like, if
mm,
that's not how you're feeling at the time, because like people are, a lot of people are dumb, let's admit it. But at the same time, we're really good at detecting, is this person being authentic, or are they putting on a front of some sort or a
mm.
mask? And that's like one of the biggest things we like, especially in dating. I remember they called it like persona fatigue. You're like, okay, I'm like Mr. Confident guy. Like, what's up?
Yeah.
What's up, girl? Yeah. And then usually that over time, it takes so much mental energy to like maintain that. By the end of the day, you're like, oh, if you're like doing all that, whether it's in sales or whatever, it's super tiring to try to be someone else.
Yeah, they'd call it being the dancing clown, especially in dating and sales. So you high energy and you're over the top, or you're the complete opposite, trying to play it too chill. And like,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm over the top. I'm super positive. I'm very, positive about every single thing in life. And how's it going? You're like, you're incredible. You love this, love this. After 10 minutes time, you're like, yeah, life is pretty okay. And after half an hour, you're like, yeah, whatever. It's just how life is. It's just inconsistent because you realize the person which you met wasn't the same person that you are 30 minutes later. And you realize, well, this person's not being honest with me.
Yeah. That's interesting. So, like, how do you get people to be more congruent with how they're feeling?
Um, Being very comfortable in what they say, like to me, there's one thing this has taught me is to say what I think. And I
Mm,
don't really give a shit what people think about my opinions. I mean, I'm not going to go my way to offend people, but I'm going to say what I think either way.
yeah.
Um, Yeah, but people try too hard. They're like, well, I'm just gonna say what I think and just offend everyone and just like I'm cool, tough. That's a fake badass kind of thing. But then there's also other people which try and be true of the whole woo-woo, like, well, I'm just going to, be positive to everyone and never say anything negative because as soon as I say negative, then negative energy comes to my lifetime. It's going to affect everything. You have to find a
Mm,
balance between both sides.
yeah, man. Well, what I think one of the important elements of spirituality is like truthfulness. Like
Yep.
there is something like your truth is basically like that thing that you feel like you should say. Usually that's like the best thing to say in the moment.
Mhm.
Like that's you being true to like the moment. But if you're trying to like fight that and like, well, there's like the thing that I feel like I want to say, but then there's like the thing that I feel like I should say, you know?
Mhm. Yeah, and that's a very fine balance, and most people try to go either, as I said, one way or the other. And you see it a lot in sales, how guys would be like pumping themselves up, and then this one guy I met, it was about 2.5 years ago, and he was very high energy, over the top. And we spoke to about half an hour after. I'm just like, man, you're cool with sales, you're good at what you do, but I sense there's something there, there's something a bit off. After that, he started breaking down about his life, his dating life. No one takes him seriously. People
Yeah.
don't really have a connection with him, and
Yeah.
you realize that everything which he's been doing is his whole front and facade. And what you
Yeah.
said before is actually very similar when it comes to dating and sales. Is that I think they have the similarities, but people use sales. The thing is that sales I find is different. Sales you have to kind of put in the front to sell a product, which is external. Dating, you have to kind of you can't put in the front, but what you're doing is you're bringing across really who you are, your own identity. So you have to shift away from anything external and just let people know who you are as soon as you meet them. And as soon as you can be upfront, grounded, and also very direct at the same time, and hold that for,
Yeah.
not even hold it, but just who you are, people feel very comfortable around you. And I now have an ability to meet people, not everyone, and have like a soulmate connection extremely fast. And I think that's also a skill a good salesperson has.
Yeah. Dude, 1,000%. Because half the skill is connecting with people and
Yeah.
building that connection really fast.
Yeah.
Um,
And
I think,
people are afraid of that connection. Yeah.
yeah, like one of my old roommates before like when I was still in college, he was a car sales guy. And, it was funny because every night he would come home and just like drink a 12 pack of beer and just be chain smoking cigarettes. And some days he would come home and I was like renting out his basement. I would come up and grab some food or something, and he would be on the couch, just kind of like sitting there. He'd be sitting there like this, like smoking cigarettes or weed or something
Yeah.
like that. And I'd be like, I look at him, I'm like, what's up with this guy? I would go back down and do homework. Come up like 2 or 3 hours later, 4 hours later, he's in the exact same position, and he
Hmm.
would do this like often. And I'd be like, Matt, bro, like, what's up with you? And he's like, it's sales, man. I'm like, what do you mean? He's
Yeah.
like, because he sold cars, and he's like, yeah. He's like, I had to put on this fake personality, like Mr. Happy all the time. Like, hey guys, and that just was not him. Like his like personal life did not reflect that at all. Like he would come home and just
Hmm.
like get fucked up like all the time. Um, and that's when I really saw it, bro. Like,
That's the biggest thing which guys start when it comes also dating, especially when it comes to face, is that you see them go out and they're these hypey guys and they're all pumped up and they're all excited listening to music. And then after
yeah,
about, 2 or 3 approaches, and they slowly go down. Then after about 5 approaches, and they get rejected, and then it goes down further again. The
yeah,
biggest thing when it comes to sales, when it comes to dating, is frame control. And if you don't know what
mm,
frame control is being able to control your frame, your emotional state, who you are, and be able to keep going through regardless of your situations and circumstances.
yeah. Dude, frame control is huge. And
Yeah,
when I think of frame control, like the way that a lot of people explain it, it's more like, if they say this, you say this to kind of like control the frame. But
yeah.
you're talking about more of like your internal frame, like
Internal. Yep.
being grounded in who you are, your value, your like value
Mm,
proposition, your intent. your
Hmm.
actions, like being more focused on like what you can control versus like them and their reactions and all that stuff, so that you're not wavering when like it doesn't go your way.
So in essence, you're becoming like the calm within the storm. So no matter what goes
Yes.
on around on the outside, no matter how many things are being distracted or doing whatever that's taking your focus away, you're absolutely calm.
Mm, that's
That's a
like a
very
crazy
hard thing for
skill in
most
and of
people to
itself.
master. Yeah.
Mm, the calm
And
within the
that's what
storm, bro.
people, yeah, especially in dating, like, people will also, as I said before, look for those things like you could be like making fake jokes, or you could be making things like these, trying to be political and all these kind of things. But when people are throwing essentially objections or shit or whatever you're gonna call it at you, and you're just like, yeah, well, that's cool, you have your opinion, respect it, that's completely fine. That's cool. I don't believe in that, whatever. As
Yeah.
soon as you know how to bring yourself down and you can get someone which is extremely aggressive for you and they're being really over the top, you'll be surprised how fast you can kind of like bring that person down into your energy.
Mm. It's when like I think part of this is having like the thing that came to my mind when you're explaining that is just having good boundaries, you know.
Hmm.
And that's something that a lot of people struggle with in all areas, definitely in sales, definitely when they're running a business, in dating. What are your thoughts on that?
And what exactly, sorry?
On like setting up boundaries for yourself or in
Yeah,
relationships.
yeah, boundaries has to be a very important thing. Um It's having integrity. And I never believe you should date someone or sell something which goes against your own personal interests, your own beliefs. I mean, not so much when it comes to sales, but if you don't say, for example, like smoking, if someone ends up smoking and you're doing it because you think if you just let them do that, they're still gonna like you and you think she's cool. But if you think, if you disagree with some political movement or if you just become vegan for a week because that's all she dates,
Yeah,
those are the things which, there are
yeah.
guys out there which do this shit all the time. Or
Oh,
they're
bro,
like,
I know.
well, I only date guys which, have bought me flowers or, do this for me once a week. And they'll be like, originally,
Oh yeah,
no,
that's me. Yeah,
but
yeah, yeah.
yeah. But then they're like, well, just do it once or just twice, and she'll know that, it's not gonna be forever. Then before they know it, it becomes this unhealthy, unstable relationship.
Yeah. Feel like you have to change yourself to
Yep.
get something from the person.
I think for me, the reason why, like, a lot of guys would be like, well, I always get girls which are full of drama. They always bitchy. They always play games with me. I never get that, never. And that's because when I meet someone, I'm very upfront and direct. And when you're upfront and direct,
Yeah.
it gives them nothing to play with. They can't
Mm.
screw with your head because they know what you're expecting, what you want, and they know what you don't put up with. So they don't have anything to be like, well, I'm gonna mess with them here and do this there because I don't take shit from people in a good way, but also I'm empathetic and I'll leave some space because not everyone's perfect.
Yeah, man. I was gonna ask too about the whole like being direct thing, because
Yeah.
again, that's another thing that's lacking with people. Like people can't. I know even for myself, there are times where like you just struggle being direct, just telling people like what you want and what you expect, what you won't tolerate. Did you have to work on that? Was that something that came like natural to you?
I had to work in a lot. I was not natural at doing that. Um, yeah. For me,
What'd
it
you do?
depends. Like, hmm. Let me think. I'm trying to think of how to phrase that. I actually did a lot of work because I was always afraid of. I was a bit of a people pleaser at some point, and I was just
Yeah.
like, yeah. For me, it was very difficult because I didn't want to piss people off and offend them, but at the same time, I learned that people actually do want to hear the truth. And it's just a matter of time before it comes out. You can hide it, you can change your words, you can make it sound more pretty. But if you don't live up to people's standards, expectations based on your own promises, it will fail inevitably.
Mm.
So that's when I learned to be like, Like now if I ask someone out, I'm just like, listen, I love your energy, your time, who you are. Let's catch up for a coffee or a tea date whenever you're free next. Are you free Monday, Friday? When's it going to be? I'm very upfront. I'm
Yeah.
very straightforward. And when you're that forward and you're also very direct,
Yeah.
you're not getting like 1,000 different texts and stuff like that, which can make it confusing. Yeah.
Yeah, man. That was the conclusion I came to about sales like a year ago. I'm like, at the end of the day, like when you throw away all the scripts and stuff and all the different ways to handle objections, all the sales conversation, it like what you're trying to do on every call is just get to the truth of their situation as fast as possible
Mhm.
and cut through the bullshit,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
and the other thing is, it's funny. I noticed as a society in general, like people feel the need that they have to lie to people to get what they want from them. It's like, oh, just tell them what they want to hear to get them to buy, or just tell them what they want to hear to get them to like you or to go on a date with you, something like that. It's like a lost
Mhm.
art of just being direct with people and actually honest.
But there's also a subtlety behind it because people will think being direct is just like, oh, you look absolutely stunning, just sleep with me right now. And that is,
Right.
in a sense, being direct, but you
It's
scare the shit
direct.
out of people.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's
That's where
direct.
the empathy comes in, right? Like,
Yeah.
how am I coming across this person? What did they, like entering their world versus trying to drag you into yours.
Mhm. Yeah, it's a very nuanced thing. Here I
It
am.
is. There it is.
Also, I was just thinking, just to continue the conversation, is uncertainty.
Mm,
Uncertainty is something you have to love. No matter how good your sales script is, no matter how good your dating is, no matter how good your conversation skills are, the beautiful thing which I love about day game is that you can have the best day, the best confidence, and then you go out and get destroyed by 10 people rejected by them. And you can have the
yeah.
worst day ever, and then you come out and you're like, well, and you have, 5 great conversations, you might see someone again. And I love that uncertainty behind sales and dating.
It's a bit like gambling.
Yeah.
Like, oh, am I going to win today? So that's what keeps you coming back.
Uh-huh.
When you
And you
say,
never know what you're gonna get.
yeah, I think there's like macro uncertainty, which is what you're talking about. Like, oh, is it going to be a
Hmm.
good day or not? But then there's like micro uncertainty, like in the interaction itself, the conversation itself.
Hmm.
Like, yes, there are only so many things you could hear, but every now and then you're going to hear something like, whoa, like where the fuck did that come? Like, I've never heard that before. That's crazy. But
Yeah.
when you say that, what comes to my mind is like having the trust in yourself that whatever they say, yeah, you're like
Hmm.
it's not going to affect you. It's not that big of a deal. Like you can find a solution if it's some weird objection you've never heard of before. It's like self-trust, which I think is another thing that most people are lacking. They need, you know, they need you to hold their hand for like all these things. And this happens so many times in sales. Like,
Yeah, that's also when it comes to going out and maybe meeting people face to face. Guys will often go out and get like their friend to go out with them and push them. And for me,
yeah,
I hate that shit. I can't stand it. But these guys need it. They need someone to
why?
push them and go out there and give them motivation. And yeah,
Yeah,
for me, it's just yeah, it's with anything when it comes to not being familiar with something. And because getting rejected for something which you truly desire on a very deep emotional level, people hate that rejection. It's terrifying. They need someone to stand there and just tell them what to do.
yeah, yeah. It's like they've like your brain is like basically turned off in certain situations like that. Like, oh, when you're especially when you're too invested, you're like, I need this to work. Like, yeah, it's all you have
Hmm.
too much importance to it, and when that happens, it's like you lose all creative and lateral thinking, and you get stumped, and all kinds of weird stuff happens. Maybe like when you're newer.
Well, it's sort of like that. Remember that Bruce Lee saying, "Hey, he says a punch is just a punch, and a kick is just a kick, and then you get better, And then he says something like a punch then becomes a different punch and a kick becomes a different kick. And you learn all these different ways. And then after that, you come full circle again and realize it's just a punch is a kick is a kick. The same when it comes to dating. When you first go out, you think you have this idea of what it is. You're very natural, but you don't have the, what is it, experiential. You didn't have the technical skills to go out there and do it. But then after that, when you get deeper into the process, you're like, whoa, now there's all these techniques. I should do this and this and this. But they actually distract you and take you away from who you are because it becomes very mechanical.
Yeah.
But then after
Yeah.
you lose those and that you've internalized those, then after that, you go back into it and you realize that those techniques are actually who you are anyway. So you don't need them on. So you end up letting all that process go, and it becomes more natural again.
Yeah. It's like the midwit curve meme, you know? It's just like at the beginning, it's just, oh, just be yourself. It's like the dummy. And then it's like the midwit has like 50 million
Mm.
different techniques. And then it's like,
Yep.
oh, the genius is just like, oh yeah, just be yourself. But it's like a different, it's like,
Yeah,
it's different because you
it's a
have the
more fully
experience.
integrated version of yourself. Yeah, at the end of it.
It's
And
kind of like
people
in
think
sales,
just
bro. It's just, I was gonna say, it's like eventually it's just like learning the principles and like relaxing and
yeah.
just kind of like knowing where to take the conversation.
Hmm. And I think that's the thing that most people also struggle with when it comes to dating and sales is leading. Maybe you can
100%.
tell me about that. Yeah.
Like how to lead the conversation.
Yeah. How do you think people struggle when it comes to leading?
Uh, dude, that's a good question because like the first things first is you have to, I think, have targets versus a script. Like, okay, like I know that a certain part of this conversation is about getting to the pain because that's the number one reason people change. It's either current pain or fear of future pain. So like I have to like that's one of my first targets, like getting to that pain, getting like dropping their guard, letting their emotions come out, letting them feel that and connect with that. And then like I just have, like I have a checklist, but like I mean another part of it, which is more of like a woo woo thing, is like you have to be able to lead yourself. You can't even lead your goddamn self to do something, which is hard. How are you going to lead somebody else? Like you won't even be able to have those
Mm.
like tougher conversations. Um,
But that also leads into a different question. What about the whole fake it till you make it?
Fake it till you make it. When it comes to leading, I mean, fake it till you make it. It's
Yeah.
like, well, I'm just going to read the script, and eventually maybe I'll turn into a leader. You know, I
But
think that's
yeah,
a
but
harder
you
way to do
also
it.
you people because people often they say believe in yourself, but then they also say fake it till you make it. And those are two opposing different things.
Yeah. Well, believe in your ability to figure it out. I would say.
Hmm. I completely agree. And people also, think if they fake it long enough, they will get it. I think there's some truth to that. But if you don't
Yeah.
know what you want and have your own boundaries, your own goals, you're going to make it very, very difficult for yourself. You still will get there. It's just going to be 10 times more harder.
Mm. You know, I want to talk about flow state because one thing that when you've when you've done a lot of sales calls, and it's probably the same for like when you're doing your day game, it's like you basically know all the questions and you know all the things that they can say. And that for me, it almost allows me to like almost like see the conversation from like a bird's eye view. It's hard to explain.
Hmm.
Like I know exactly what they're gonna say. Oh, they said this. It's like I know exactly what they're gonna say. So I'm not like thinking about the next question. It's like, okay, well, I know based on what they said, this objection is gonna come up. So I have to ask this. But
Hmm.
um it's like accessing a flow state, which is like what allows you to do that. And the funny thing is, like when I used to go out and meet chicks, I always knew it was a good night when I would come home with more energy. You know, like I would be all like pumped up, and I knew that I was in flow state. Versus when I would come home and be all tired, I'm like, I knew I was like forcing it, and I didn't get into like that flow state. I think that's super important. Like nobody really talks about that in sales.
This is a very interesting concept. And I'm always questioning this. And it's a very profound thing for me. And I've gone out where days I've had the exact same energy, the exact same intensity, but my mindset's off. And I've gone out where I've had that same mentality, but then I slip into flow state and I feel incredible and feel amazing. And those
Yeah.
days, even though I'm feeling buggered, I'm feeling exhausted, I'm feeling fatigued, even though I feel like I'm absolute, buggered and screwed, because I'm in flow state, my energy multiplies by 100. But even at my best
Yeah.
capacity, when I'm feeling actually quite good, I will never reach that level, and I feel exhausted and more mentally fatigued a lot faster without that flow state.
Yeah. I think it's probably a lot to do with your self-talk because when you're in flow state, your
Hmm.
the self-talk kind of stops. And I know
Yeah.
like there's many things that I think are like energy drainers, and the biggest one by far is I literally think it's self-talk because most of the time it's negative. We're beating ourselves up or we're worried about what they might say or there's like we're running through all these weird scenarios and stuff, but we're not like actually completely present.
Hmm. Before I get into that present state and that flow state, I'm actually quite negative. Well, in a sense, I'm
Yeah,
negative. Like it's good intentions, but my mindset, come on, keep doing it. Don't stop, keep going. What are you giving up for? People die first. People are starving in third world countries, and you're afraid to say hello to someone. What's your bullshit
yeah,
excuse? Keep going. And this is over and over and over and over again. But then when I reach a certain point, that flow state, it's like my mind just goes absolutely silent and my energy just multiplies. And I'm not thinking about what I'm saying. In fact, it's more of an experiential and emotional experience. And I feel like I'm elated my thoughts. And instead of
yeah,
actually focusing just on the pure outcome of what I want to be doing, what I'm going to be saying, where I'm going to be taking it, everything in life seems like an experience. Instead of just speaking to someone just because I want something from them, I'm having conversations with everyone everywhere. I'm making everyone's days. People are laughing. And when you multiply that energy, especially in sales, people want to be around that energy, and it's like a contagious and infectious thing. So that's the thing which
yeah.
I love about flow state.
Yeah, you in sales you get into like hot streaks and it's like you're so it's like you're so like sure of yourself. You're like, let's just say I was on 10 calls and closed nine of them. I'm not going to be worried about the next call. And like you're
Hmm.
coming into it with that ease, right? And like
Yep.
you've engaged like the winner effect, like the book. Um, so your brain is like it's like turned on. And that's like the magical state to be in. I asked my buddy this. We had like a little interview. He's a closer, and he's really good. Like when I'm having like ruts, I'll call him up, and he's like, "Oh yeah, just say this and this." Like I'm like, "Oh yeah," it was just it's usually like little micro tweaks and stuff. But I asked him, I was like, "Okay, well, like what do you feel like it's the next level for you?" Because your skills are there. Like you know how to handle every objection. You've done this thousands and thousands of times, doing this for a long time. And he's like, "Oh, dude, it's just he said getting into a peak state all the time. Like he's like, I have weeks when I'm just crushing, and then if I get into a negative state, I way underperform. And it's not so much the skills, but it's like that state control. Like he's like, how do I
Hmm.
like getting to a point where I can just control that for every conversation? That's like the next level for me.
Yeah, but the thing is, to get to flow state, you have to go through a lot of pain usually. And it's similar to like marathon or athlete runners, how they say just before they feel like they're going to give up, like they hit another level and they can push through another 30 kilometers.
Yeah.
I love that feeling. I love that. Yeah, pushing through that fear boundary. I love that.
Mm. I mean, part of the reason why I do like 100 burpees in one set in the morning, it's just that, when I start feeling negative, feeling like shit, I'm like, I'm tired. I want to go back to sleep. And around like the 30th one, I'm like, okay, that's enough. I'm not going to do 100 today. I'm just like, this is enough. And then by 40, I'm like, fuck, I'm just going to keep going. By 50, I'm like, it's not too bad. 60, I'm like, oh, I'm almost done. 70, like
Yeah,
80. By like 90, I'm like, oh man, I could just do like another 100, and it's like a complete uh mood like a state change. By the end of it, I'm like ready to like go and run through a fucking wall.
it's the exact same when it comes to sales calls. And I remember me, like I have no way near experience as you, but I was doing cold calling, and it's like first one, you're like, oh, shit, they hung up on me. Second one, they want to speak to
Yeah.
me. Third one, they just, carry the conversation because they want to be kind. And by the time you get to 5 and 6, you're just like, why am I doing this?
Yeah.
But then after you push through that, then the 6 and 7, and then they're a little bit more positive. So what you're looking for is micro positivities within each interaction to keep you going.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to
Yeah,
be
that's
that they
huge.
have they don't have to actually, sell your product, but they may be a little bit more curious. They may be a little bit more confident. They may be a little bit more receptive. You may have a bit of connection with that person. So you're
Yeah.
always looking for the tiny things to focus on, what to improve on in every single one.
Yeah. Yeah, dude, 100%. Is rather than focusing on what went wrong, you're like, oh well, this is good. I could, I did this good. This is good. Oh, like it's just like stacking little wins, like micro wins,
Yeah.
which turn into the big wins because that's all success is. It's like most skills. It's just like those little micro adjustments, like tonality, like the
Hmm.
questions I was asking, like verbal pausing. Like there's so many little like weird little skills that over time, as you make all these little adjustments, that's when you have like the quantum leaps in your results.
Yeah.
And people are like, wow, like how like you're so good. Like, yeah, or like I've done
Hmm.
this like thousands and thousands of times. And I found every way that doesn't work.
Yeah. And when you get familiar with that failure, it's just like it's nothing. But from your perspective, what holds people back the most from their success when it comes to sales?
Um, Man, there's a lot. Part
The
of
main
it,
one.
like when you're first getting started, it's fear of rejection, it's like the little thing. Sales is something where there's lots of ups and downs, and it's really easy to get in your head. Like, for example, last year, um, I was having like, I don't know, like I was on a massive upward, spiral. I was making good money, closing lots of sales. I was traveling. I was doing all this cool stuff, and then I went to work for another company, and it was like their sales process was weird. Their offer was kind of weird, and I wasn't closing as many sales. And rather than focusing on like, well, what could I change, or like, um, what am I doing wrong? Or like, what could I improve? I started blaming external things, like, oh well, the leads
Hmm.
aren't good, and it's the business's fault. And it's like, this is shitty. It's like I'm like blaming an external thing to me. Like, this is why I'm not successful. It's not me. It's this thing over here. And the more you take your power away, and the more your results go down, then you start, like, I had an identity of being like really good at sales, and then you start questioning your identity, and so you're showing up to calls even worse because you're focusing on external stuff, and you're like,
Hmm.
you sound unconfident, you sound nervous, you're even closing less. And so then you start looking at your bank account and you're starting to get freaked out, and you're like, oh fuck. Maybe you start overcompensating, you're more pushy on calls. You're like, I need this one to
Hmm.
close. I have rent to pay. Like, fuck. And before you know it, like, you're fucked. And so I found most of the ups and downs in sales, um that's like it's all that like internal, like, what am I focusing on? Right? Like, am I focusing on stuff that I can control, things that I can do better? Like, oh, that call was pretty, like, how often am I even reviewing my own calls? And I think it's having a level of like emotional resilience too. Like, when you
Hmm.
go into a dip, you don't allow yourself to make it worse. It's normal to have ups and downs in sales because there's factors outside of your control. You can't really control what people do, right? You could do everything right on 10 out of 10 calls, and they could all say no, and you'd be like, wow, what the fuck, I thought it was. And then you start questioning yourself, and you're like, fuck, maybe it's my script, maybe I need sales training. But then the next 10 calls, you do the exact same thing, and they all close.
Hmm.
You're like, what the fuck? I'm a god now.
Yep.
It's bad because once your skills
Exact
hit a
same with
certain level,
dating.
there's
Yeah.
if you're at like 80%, let's say, like you know, there's not much more that you can learn skills wise, or, big. It's like the way I think of it. It's like there's if you have a like a glass bottle and you drop it, there's like big shards. Like okay, like the script, how you present the offer, how you ask questions. These are like the big things, and those are like the obvious things. But it's like the little splinters, which can
Hmm.
get you. If that makes sense.
Yeah. How do you think you can stop people from slipping into those negative spirals and how it compounds and keeps going?
It's like a decision. Like what? Like first of all, it's like well, like when someone starts blaming things that are outside of their control, like you have to like remind them like hey like let's make sure that we're focusing on things that are in your control, like your tonality and the questions you're asking and how you're showing up. Like,
Hmm.
are all those things perfect? Are your habits outside of sales, are they all dialed in? Or, are you like like salespeople are notorious for doing like the Wolf of Wall Street lifestyle, where they'll make a bunch of
Yeah.
money and then they'll just go and party and become like degenerates.
Hmm.
And as soon as then they're like back to like professional mode and like, there's I think most of your success comes from like what you do outside of sales, like outside of work.
That's very good. And I think it comes again down to identity and finding a root or a structure in who you are. Because even though you do get success because you will sooner or later, just a matter of luck, sooner or later you'll get success. But if you get success without grounding and knowing who you are and having that core identity, it's just a matter of time before you screw it up. Because that what
Yeah,
happens is you become dependent so much on external factors, is that when things do go right, you just blow it all again. And I
yeah,
used to see guys like this in dating and day game. There was this one guy, he looked like Captain America, really good looking guy, and he was doing amazing. He went out and his first month, he ended up seeing four girls, and he was doing really, really good. He was doing great. And what
yeah,
happened is he built up this false sense of identity, his confidence that he could do this all the time. I was like, man, you're great
yeah,
at what you do. You got a good start, but I'm just warning you. This is just beginner's luck. I'm warning you. He's like, no, I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm fine. And then
yeah,
after that, 2 months later, his finding was a little bit harder, then a little bit harder. And then that negative spiral and those negative lack of, success or rejection got to him. And he ended up started doubting himself. And then after that, he ended up quitting
yeah.
altogether. And now he's been single for like a year and a half and never seeing anyone. And if he kept going and not letting that to get to his mind, his ego, and affect him, he would have been doing great.
Yeah, it's always the lessons when you're losing that are the most important.
Hmm.
Like how do you prevent self-doubt is a better question. Like how do you like a big part of it is knowing that that's like a natural thing. It's natural to start doubting yourself if you
Hmm.
don't close a few sales, if you don't get the results that you're looking for. And like I remember hearing one of my old mentors say, like the mark of a professional salesperson is how many no's they can get and still follow the process. Because eventually, it's like the process is the process. If this is like the best process, you know, it kind of is a numbers game at the end of the day. Like it is and it isn't. There's skills play a huge part, but again, you can't control people. It's we can think we can like like I'll hit a certain level of persuasive ability, and then I'll be able to
Yeah.
just like I'll be like the puppet master, just like they'll do whatever I want.
Hmm.
They're like are there people that are that good? Like maybe, but I think it's about expectations. It's when you just expect
Yeah.
everything. Like when things are going good, you always expect them to go good. This is like the foundation of like bull runs and like market. When people
Hmm.
get freaked out when the market crashes, they're like, "What? No!" It's like, well,
Hmm.
hey, like if you looked at history, this pretty much happens. Like what goes up must go down, right? That's another like spiritual thing. It's
Exactly.
like
Yeah.
there's always going to be polarity. And if your expectations are for everything to always go good and to always go your way, you're going to be fucked. But if your expectations are to
Hmm.
just I always follow the process, connecting with the person, finding what their pains are, presenting an offer that's like a solution to their pains, and doing all the things that I can do, that's most of it.
Yeah. Um, well, there's this data chain quote which is actually quite similar to what you're saying. It's more in terms of resilience, and it says when you're actually at your absolute strongest, you're at your weakest, and when you're at your absolute weakest, you're at your absolute strongest. And most people, when it comes to dating, when it comes to sales, especially dating, they think they're on top of the world. I've got nothing to lose. I've conquered it all. I've got it all. And after that, they just end up screwing themselves up, self-sabotaging themselves. But often the beautiful thing which I love about dating, I love about dating, because when you hit rock bottom, there's so many times where I'm just like, I've never thought about giving up. I'm just like, why am I doing this? This is pointless. And I've reluctantly walked
Yeah,
into an interaction or a conversation so many times and thought this is going to go nowhere. She's in a hurry. She's bored. She's on the phone. She doesn't want to talk to me. She's too good looking. And those have been the best interactions I've ever had, and people which I've known for 6 or 7 years, and had like a soulmate connection. So that's the
yeah,
same thing. I think the same paradigm when it comes to sales is that yes, you can have all the skills, but there's always going to be an element of luck. You can't beat it.
yeah. Like it's also just good knowing your numbers, right? Like in business and in sales, like the best sales teams I were on, they knew their numbers like the back of their hand. It's like if you only close, let's say you're closing 40%, which is like pretty good. That means 60% of people are going to say no.
Hmm.
And it's just the name of the game. So if at the end of the month you're like, why didn't I make the money that I want? Or like, like, oh, I didn't get any dates this month. Well, how many people did you talk to? Did you actually like honor the process, which is like knowing what your numbers are? Um, like there's a lot of people that are like, oh, I'm freaking out because they're not making money, but like, well, like how many offers did you make this week? And they're like, one. Like, well, no wonder, dick shit.
Hmm. Yeah, well, it's the
Yeah,
same when it comes to dating. Like people think that if they just, build their muscles and they walked in the street and people are going to throw themselves at them, it's like bullshit. I've never known
yeah,
anyone out of all my 11 years that has looked incredible, that has in great shape, that has
yeah,
all the money in the world, um, that has had women just magically throw themselves at them. It doesn't
no,
matter how good you are, what demographic you are, what you've been through, how smart you are, how fit you are. If you aren't willing to go out there and put yourself through the pain of rejection, to me, I hate to sound blunt, maybe a little bit arrogant, but you don't deserve success. Because even when you do get it, you want to know how to appreciate it, what to do with it, because you want how to maintain it, because you have this ego that you think that the world is entitled to what you think is what's right and what you deserve.
hmm. Yeah, man. I've
You
had to
want,
learn that
yeah,
lesson like many times.
like as soon as you get entitled, something will screw up, you'll mess up. Even if it's not yourself, something will also go wrong because life is basically saying you don't deserve it. You need to work for it. You need to
No.
earn it. You need to appreciate it. And if you don't do that, I'm going to take it away until you learn again and again and again. And if you think you
Hmm.
can walk around learning all the sales scripts, you think you can go walk around being like, well, I deserve sales because my marketing's this and this and this and this. Sure,
Yeah.
maybe you may get some good things, but it's just a matter of before you fail. And it's not how many successes you can get, it's how much you can keep going when you get those, failure rates, which you will.
Yeah.
There are times where you get 15. I mean, I rarely get more than 6 or 7, 8 rejections in a row now. But the other day I went out and it hit me a little bit, but not much gets me when it comes to dating. It was like 20 in a row. And I was like, wow, this is weird. And for a second I was like, oh, this is kind of strange. Is it because of what I'm wearing today? And those self-doubts come in. It was like, no, it's just a matter of time before you screw up and you mess up.
Hmm. And the entitlement thing is
And
so big. How many people like
yep.
think that just because they bought a course, so like they're now entitled to making like 10K per month or whatever the number is. Like, you know, it's one thing as a coach. They're like, well, I paid you, so I'm entitled to get these results. Like, well,
Hmm.
you still have to do the work, and you still have to go through failures. The other thing too is like, I think when you don't care as much about the result, and you're like, well, I'm just gonna go out and do it anyway because it's like part of my discipline. I'm just like every day. I think it's something I do. I just go and talk to girls, for example, and
Hmm.
by you like not putting that much like importance on it, when it doesn't go your way, you're just like, oh, okay, well, it's not that big of a deal.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, this is more of like my inner David Goggins come out, but I love fear and pain. I love it. If I'm more scared I am, the more excited I get.
yeah,
And my coach, and this sounds ridiculous. I was thinking about this before. My coach, I used to do, well, I still do Tai Chi Chuan, and people think Tai Chi Chuan is this magical form, mystical art, which you do in the art, it's easy.
yeah,
The first time I went up and I tried to do it, it was filled with a group of 60-year-olds and 70-year-olds, and they were doing a certain pose for 30 minutes nonstop. The
yeah,
teacher came up to me, and I was doing bodybuilding, and I could at the time leg press 750 kilos easy. He came up and just got
yeah,
my knees, shifted them half an inch, got my ankle
yeah.
shifted in half an inch. After 20 seconds, I collapsed straight to the ground. And
Really?
that's because on a metaphorical, metaphysical level, my muscles externally were strong. My tendons were weak. So
Yeah,
people have this huge ego when it comes to sales, when it comes to dating, of I just need this and this and this. But if you don't have the strength, the micro little successes and know how to actually learn to condition yourself into that fear, into that pain, again, you won't actually have a long-term success and you'll keep screwing up and keep, breaking down. And now when
yeah,
I'm training, it's very weird. Like I'll sit in the pose and most people can't do it for like 30, 40 seconds. But every time when I'm going through my training, I'll put myself through intense agony. And this isn't just like, your legs sore. It feels like your tendons are going to snap. But every time when I get more into that pain and I sink into it, my mind becomes clear and the pain fades. And I sink a little
yeah.
bit deeper and that pain fades away and I get deeper. And this is sort of like rejection. And I always train myself to, when I feel that pain, never try and fight it, always sink into it, understand it, and listen to it.
That is some David Goggins shit, bro. But it's so true
Yeah.
because all growth is outside of your comfort zone, for one. And number two,
Hmm.
like pain is like an activator of consciousness. And most people
Hmm.
run from pain. This, like, I remember hearing a quote by Carl Jung. He said, all neuroses, which are like anxiety, mild mental illness, you know, things like that, they're a byproduct of pain avoidance. So
Yeah.
most people have pain in their life, which might be fear, might be whatever, fear of rejection or fear of success or whatever. And rather than just facing it head on and going into it, because the success is on the other side of it, let's be honest. They go, well, how can I avoid this? Like, what are the tricks that I can use to avoid this? What can I use to numb myself so I won't
Hmm.
feel it? And that's why they don't really experience the inner growth or the outer results, really.
Well, fear and pain itself is just a social, emotional association which you make. That's all it comes down to. I mean,
Right.
fear and
Yeah, because one
pain
thing
are just,
fearful for you might be like pleasurable for somebody else, right? And you kind of
hmm.
like condition yourself to
But
switch what's painful.
when I'm going through that much agony and pain, so I always try and go into pain physically, emotionally, and mentally, and spiritual as well. So I always, every single day, I make myself suffer within every single one. The suffer is a very, very strong word, but the
Yeah,
more I go into that, the more peace I find because it's sort of like the Buddhists would say the metaphor of sitting within the fire. So it may feel like your whole body's on fire, may feel like you can't take any more, but when your mind becomes absolutely still and quiet and calm it's like you don't feel that pain. It's not that it's not there. It becomes a lot more tolerable. It becomes a lot more. It's almost like an invitation. It's something exciting.
mm. it's funny because like somebody watching this is like they're just talking about dating and sales, but this is like so this is like
Yeah.
everything. I'm sure like this is what David Goggins, this is why he runs every day. Because he says, I remember
Mm,
hearing him on the podcast I listened to the other day. He's like, the guy's like, do you love running? And he's like, because you run every day, he runs like 100 kilometers a day or something crazy. He's like, no, it's like the worst thing that I do, but I have to do it.
yeah, and as I said at the start of the podcast, like the actual dating component of it is probably like 15, 10% at most. It's for me having the discipline to go out and always face my fear and do something which I thought would be impossible.
Yeah.
Um, that I love. And to me, it's a spiritual sense of growth. And people can find it through art, they can find it through running, they can find it through dating, they can find it through sales, but it all comes
Yeah.
back to the same
Meditating or
principles.
something, you know? Yeah.
Yeah. And within
Yeah,
all
bro.
that shit, the more I'd say suffering, more trauma you experience, and more you become aligned within that, um, life becomes a lot more easy because you realize, like most people, when they drop their phone, they smash their phone, like shit, I've got a
It just
broken phone
ruins.
now, life is
Yeah.
terrible. Yeah,
Yeah.
their day is done, finished. But when
Yeah.
you've been rejected by 15 people, when you've pushed your body to the absolute limit and you can keep going through that, um, life becomes so much more better and you feel a lot more happy, a lot more grateful.
Dude,
All
100%.
the small shit which you thought was, a huge deal is no longer a deal at all.
Yeah. That is so true. That is so true, man. Like, that's one of the things that I really found that I got out of, the whole like pickup phase is just stuff started phasing me a lot less. Just like not
Yeah.
really like emotionally reactive to the stuff that used to like, trigger me. It was like, yeah, it's like no big deal because you put yourself through like more stressful situations and you get, I
Hmm.
think part of that, um, you can get part of that maybe from like working out hard early in the morning or something like that. So that's part of my philosophy is like in sales, like I like to have a morning routine that's harder than the rest of my day because I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, I put myself through an uncomfortable, like I made my morning routine hard on purpose so that, when you're on a sales call and someone gives you an objection and say no, you're like, all right, like whatever, on to the next one. That's a big part of it.
Mm. Well, I used to take my guys out and I used to do a little bit of coaching and stuff here and there. And you'd hear the weirdest things, like after coaching, and some of the guys end up taking the girl home and seeing them again. He's like, you know what's really, really weird, Mark? He's like, I would have thought the best part of the whole coaching thing
Would be
was
the
taking the girl
session.
home.
Yeah.
Yeah, they thought it would be the absolute best part. He's like, you know what the actual weird part is? The best part I loved about it was actually meeting someone, having a great conversation with them, going up and having, an interaction with them and having to go somewhere. So
Yeah.
you never thought a guy would say that. But for me, they got addicted to pushing that fear and going past that because once you get something, it can diminish after that, and you'd be like, okay, what now? I've already got what I want. You've reached the top of the mountain. What next? But
Yeah.
that process of going through that fear and pushing themselves and making them do something they never thought was possible, yeah, they like that so much more, and I do too.
Yeah. I mean, the sex is only gonna last like 5 minutes anyway. So, uh,
I'm not sure what you're doing. I'm
I
not
mean,
sure what you're doing,
yeah.
Ben. Yeah.
I don't know. It's a
Okay,
marathon.
fair enough. Yeah, yeah, yeah. 3 hours. 3 hours is what you have to say.
Like 3 minutes of that is just apologizing. But
Well, well, that's true, maybe. Yeah, but sometimes, guys, they build up this idea, and I think it's the same for sales. It's like they get this idea of getting the sale and like Wolf of Wall Street and get $10,000, but then they end up signing a check. The money goes into the bank account, and you're like, okay, that's nice, that's cool, but what now?
yeah,
And then they have to go back into another call, and then they have to do it again, and they realize that the pain's still going to be there either way. You got to
yeah, bro.
either love it or hate it. It doesn't matter. It's still going to be the same. You got to have to wake up every single day and do the same shit, whether you have any
Yeah, it's like
successes or
every
not.
day you're starting at baseline. It's not like your
Yeah.
successes from yesterday literally don't matter at all. Especially when
Hmm.
you're like on a sales team with high standards and performance and stuff. Like that was a tough thing for me because I remember I had my best month in sales. I had like 30 sales this month, and I'm like, I'm on top of the world. And then the next month, like day one of the next, it's like, oh, blank slate again. I'm like,
Yep.
and I got in my head, and I had like my worst month after my best month because of that.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I agree to some degree. I agree somewhat to the idea how people say emotions don't really matter. Not, your brain doesn't give a shit what you're thinking. I think there's some truth to that. I think the idea when it comes to mentality, mindset, when it comes to self-discipline, is learning to know what to tell your brain in the right context, in the right situation. Because one
Mm,
truth may affect you differently compared to when you're in a different situation another time. Okay, when I'm failing, I'm just like, what you've been through, you've done this 10,000, 25,000 times before. You've already screwed up, you've already messed up. Why don't you keep going, one more step, one more step, one more step. And my actual thing, on a side note, I never leave a day, I never leave an interaction, I never leave anything done. I also do it 3 times more and I get something positive out of it because I'm always retraining and reinforce my positive beliefs. I always leave on a good note. If you leave on a negative note,
right.
you're gonna go home and then ruminate and then think, well, I messed up, I screwed up, it's gonna be horrible.
Yeah.
It's the last thing
That
you
was a
should
waste of
remember.
time. Yeah. Like I fucking suck.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So for me, it's always that idea of trying to reframe everything. I mean, there are days where
Yeah.
I'm doing really, really well, and I'm just like, whoa, it's gonna be easy, it's gonna be great. I'm just like, don't get yourself fooled, Mark. You're doing great. But it's gonna become in that failure, that thing which you thought would never happen, and it does happen.
Yeah, man. It's basically mindset training at like
Yeah.
one of the highest levels.
And people don't understand, rejection when it comes to sales and when it comes to dating. Like people, I've gone up to people and offered them to pay $50, $100, and they wouldn't do it. I'm busy, I can't go to work. And it's like, man, that's $100.
$100 for what? You
People
go and talk to a chick.
like to go up and say, yeah, to go up and say, hey, you look this and this and this. People will
Yeah.
always avoid, yeah, fear and pain.
I think there's this part of our brains that like subconsciously links like humiliation with like death.
Hmm.
You could say it goes back to like when we were like living in caves with small tribes. If like like you were humiliated, maybe you were outcasted, and next thing you know, you're dead because
Hmm.
you're on your own. So yeah, and it's on one level, it's like a real thing, but on the other level, it's completely not. Like, who cares about a person that you just met 2 seconds ago that you'll maybe never see again? Like, oh, she wasn't nice to me.
Hmm.
This prospect didn't buy. It's the end of the world. I like
For me,
ideally
yeah.
you get over that if you're pretty fast because it's kind of like level one. If you're doing this for 10 years and that's still your sticking point, like
Mhm.
that's fucked up.
I think what it comes down to me is potential. It's like I could do this and be here, but I know I felt lazy this day. I didn't feel like I want to do it. And what if you could have walked in the
Yeah.
street, you could have met someone, and you could have done it and had a great interaction. But because you're afraid, you're uncertain, you miss the opportunity. And
Yeah.
we're born one out of 600 billion, 1 out of 600 million sperm. We could have died, we could have been killed, we could have to live to the age of 70 with few health problems is extremely uncommon. You have all the things going on for you right now in life. In your perspective, what you think failure is, rejection is this tiny little dot, which means nothing. You're going to be dead. You're going to be gone forever. And you have this smaller window, this smaller time frame to exist. And you're
Yeah.
saying no to that. I hate that.
Dude, that's deep.
Yeah.
And it's so true.
Every single
It's
day.
like there's literally so much potential that we're just missing just because
Hmm.
of our stupid brains. Like, oh, like it just automatically
And
creates the worst case scenarios. I find that with
it's not
content. People
just,
are like,
yeah.
they're always afraid that if they make content, they're going to be like, people are going to, they're going to attract haters or something like that. I'm like, well, why are you
Hmm.
creating like a negative avatar on the other end of that phone or that video? Why don't
Mm.
you picture the best case scenario? Like, oh, like what if this goes viral and I really grow my brand and really grow my business? Why aren't you thinking about that? Or all the people that it could help? It's like we're so self-conscious and so self-centered, and maybe it's an ego thing, but I think when you put it in the larger perspective, like, bro, your time's limited. Like, why aren't you playing to win in every area? Your dating, your
Hmm.
business, your sales, your health.
Well, that's the whole playing to win versus playing to lose. Whereas most people, you'll
Play
even
not to
find
lose.
guys
Yeah,
going out, yeah, they'll go out there and they won't intentionally try and get rejected, or they won't
they
actually
just play it
try and
safe.
go their way to. They play it safe enough to get their foot in the door, maybe, but they're
Mm,
afraid of the success and going out there and pushing their limit.
yeah. Did you like feel the same way when you were getting started?
Yeah. My first 2 years were hard. I would have got rejected at least 10, no, 15,000 times in my first 2 years and had 3 dates. My first 2 years.
Damn.
My third year, yep, I had three dates and I wasn't with someone. My third year would have been, I'd say I met 20, like if you multiply it, 20 women a day, 8 hours a day, 7 days a week, working at night time, I would have had at least 17,000 rejections. In the third year, maybe I would have got 6 dates. In my fourth year, I broke through. And after that, it was a date every month. After the next year, it was probably once every 2 or 3 weeks. And then after now, it can be 4 or 5 weeks, some weeks. So it's
Yeah.
same with sales. It's learning
Same with
to
sales,
push
bro.
yourself through.
Exactly.
So you're never going to go out there and, win and succeed. It sometimes takes 2 or 3 years, but it's being able
Yeah.
to see yourself in the future and having faith in yourself and keep going no matter what, no matter how painful it is.
Yeah, bro. And like sticking with it. Because I remember when I was first getting started in business, like as a copywriter, this guy, like it was like my biggest client at the time. He paid me 4 grand to write some copy for him. And at the time that was like life-changing money. I remember like going like partying. I was like, this is crazy. Like 4 grand. I couldn't imagine at that time. And like, if my last client paid me like 5K, I was like, I was like, okay, cool. It didn't even like the the emotional like up from that time was like way up here. The next time it was like here. I was like, awesome, all right, sweet. It was just like completely normal. Yeah, I
Hmm.
don't know, like maybe that's a good thing or a bad thing. I don't know, but it's
Yeah,
just
that
comes
threshold,
from
yeah,
it's
seems to
from
get bigger.
time in the game. You know,
Hmm.
your results get bigger, more normalized, your expectations go up. And as your skills go up, you get more results. So it's like this. I think people are just afraid to put in the time because they want quick results too. They have like a weird timeline in their mind. Like I should be perfect week, like day one. Like your buddy, like I got 4 dates my
Hmm.
first month. You're like, bro, I had 3 dates in like 2 years. Sometimes that's all it
Yep.
takes for someone to have like a realignment of their expectations. Like, oh fuck, okay, like my expectations are way up here. Like they should be down here. Like,
Hmm. And you should always expect yourself to fail in a good way and realize it's going to happen
yeah,
almost all the time. And when I started going out, yeah, I mean, I always had this mentality, if someone else can do it and they have the 2 arms and 2 legs, I can do it. It
yeah,
might take me 10 years, it might take me 15 years, but I will get it done. And for me, if I say something to myself and I make that promise, yeah, it will be done. Don't care what it takes. And I'm very serious about that. It's just like you need to be able to hold yourself accountable for what you're going to say you're going to be doing.
yeah. That's like a rule that I live by. That like the say do, I
Hmm.
call it the say do ratio. It was like one of the values in this little company that I work for. Like you have to have a say do ratio. It's like if you say you're gonna do this amount of sales, you have to do it. If you say you're gonna go to the gym at 5 p.m., like you have to do it. If you say you're gonna follow up this guy at this time, like you have to do it. It's a say do ratio. Like it's not just like a business thing. It applies to all areas of life because I think part of your confidence comes from that track record. Like, oh, everything that I've said I do, I always do it.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think when it comes to especially sales, people will always put it off. Oh, I want to do a call tomorrow, maybe next weekend. I'm not really feeling up to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, excuses are,
It's
flourishing when it
like,
comes to doing business.
yeah, like delay is like, it just breeds excuses, doesn't it? Like it must be
Hmm.
insane as dating. If you see like some beautiful girl, like,
Of
oh my God, I want to
course.
talk to her. The longer you like, it's like the longer that there is a time between the decision and taking the action, the more fear
Hmm.
pops up. Like fear is a direct, it's like, it's caused by inaction.
Yeah, that's the 5 second rule. I think Mystery or whatever one of his names what made up. And I think there's some truth
It's a
towards it.
good rule. Yeah.
But yeah, it's a good rule to always act on. I mean, you can't always base it on 5 seconds, depending on how busy someone is. And you can't. I mean, some you might have set up a sale, and that person may be busy, or maybe at lunch, or may have to go to the bathroom or whatever. So it's a good principle to have
And I think
act as soon as you can, whenever
it's
you
about
can.
seizing opportunities when they present themselves.
Hmm.
That's the
Yeah,
bigger lesson.
exactly. Yeah.
Like training yourself to like when you see an opportunity, you jump on it,
Hmm.
not to be
Um,
apathetic.
I I'd rather screw up and have the regret of not of regret of doing it than not doing it. I think that's what I've hardwired myself into believing. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You're like, at least I went for it. Fuck. You could be like,
Hmm.
well, who else would have done that? No one. We can't even pay people
Of
$100 to
course.
go talk to that girl. So that is a
Well,
win in and of itself.
yeah. And for me, it's just like again, there are other people out there who are successful. You may not want to become Bill Gates or whatever it is. They're one in, 6 billion people. But if you start a business, there's a pretty good chance that you should be able to make a decent profit enough to get by. So you should set your expectations to where you should be, as opposed to going a little bit too crazy. And I mean,
Yeah.
we've said it a few times. If you misalign your expectations, you're always going to fail because no matter how good you get, you're always going to think you should be better. And if you don't know how to actually have the small wins, you're always going to be failing.
Yeah. In your own mind. Yeah. You just focus on the wrong thing.
Yeah.
And you know what? I've been
I
doing
mean,
two reels a day on Instagram for over a year now. And I told myself when I got started, I'm like, I don't care if they get like one view, like or none of them. I'm just going to commit to the discipline of just doing two reels a day
mhm,
every single day, and like I'm not going to miss on that. And I haven't, even when I was like on top of a goddamn the tallest mountain in Costa Rica. I still posted, found Wi-Fi at the top of the
mhm,
mountain, and I still posted them.
hmm. Yeah, I find like most, especially when it comes to more of the dating side, and this also overlaps into sales, is that people will have these excuses like, well, I'm too fat, I'm not smart enough, I'm not good enough, and I don't have the good looks and stuff like that. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I
Oh, my
started
offer
out
is not
and
perfect. It's not a
my
hundred
offer's
million
not
dollar offer
perfect,
like Alex Ramosi talks about. I
and
can't. Yeah.
you've got it. I mean, you can take it both ways. There's two sayings which I like is that I believe you're kind of like a blank canvas and you have to, well, basically a clay ball and you can chisel yourself out and discover who you are. And you do that through pain and failure and whatever it else it
Mm-hmm.
is. But at the same time, you need to know you can't just chisel things away. You need to know what to add, what to improve on. So it's a constant refinement and also addition to who you are in taking away the inessentials because once you really carve out who you are and what you're doing, where you're going, it makes the process a lot more refined, a lot more clear, and a lot more easier.
Hmm. How important do you think it is to have like a strong vision or a strong goal, just in general?
I think that your ability to maintain a strong goal and strong vision is only based on how much pain you can have in your life.
Mm.
Because you can have the biggest goal in your life. You can be like Elon Musk and have the greatest goal. You can dream about being the best on the earth. But as soon as a little breeze comes along, it's like the metaphor of like a strong tree. If you can be this little twig and think you're going to be this oak tree, but you're never there. As soon as a little wind comes across, you snap in half as soon as you have resistance. Whereas
Yeah.
if you become a great, willow or oak or whatever big tree it is out there, and you form yourself into that solid structure, So when a storm
Yeah.
does come, it's just like, yeah, whatever. So your ability to actually
So
withstand pain
yeah.
is how well you can be, how well you can do in life.
So it's you can think of it like your ability to withstand pain and suffering and all these negative emotions is like your roots, like creating roots so that you're just more grounded.
Yeah.
Just because that goes back to like the whole eye of the storm thing.
hmm And I think that's also appreciating the beautiful things as well in life, the nice things, the cool things. Because if you just focus on the pain and suffering, that's all life will be. Because life is only what your attention brings. You become
Yeah.
what you focus on. And when you sit there focusing on, how many things you've gone through, and you don't know how to sit back and just chill and be like, well, you know what? I've come a long way. I've done this. I can keep going,
Yeah.
and I've been through all this shit. I can keep doing more and more and more. You don't have any real limits. I mean, apart from the metaphysical stuff flying through the air or unicorns or
Yeah.
whatever, for the most part, the only thing which is holding you back is your own thought and your own mind. Because once you understand that limitation
100%.
is just something, a concept, everything else becomes a lot more clear. But you can't understand that just on an intellectual level or a spiritual level. You have to be able to experience that.
Well, man, I
Yeah.
think we had a pretty good talk here. Um,
hmm
I think that's a good note to wrap it up on. Where can people
I
find
think
you
we'll
if
leave it
they want
there.
to, maybe follow you or connect with you? What's the best place for people to reach you?
You can add me on Facebook, Mark Miller, if you want to reach out, just have a conversation, talk to me about something like that. That's also cool. Um, I'll give Ben my link in my
Yeah, I'll put it in the
I'll give it to
bio
him
or
so he
in
can
the description.
put it in the bio. But
The,
yeah, I
the
love talking
description
about
of the
this
YouTube
stuff.
video. Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
Thanks for
Do you
having me
still
on,
do
Ben. I
coaching
really
or
appreciate it.
do you still offer coaching and stuff, or
I
is that like not
consider
so much?
I still do coaching if guys really want to get better with their dating life and they want to get really good when it comes to going out and meeting people face to face rather than bullshitting online and paying money for subscriptions so you can get, 10,000 a competition with guys competing with you. I don't strongly suggest that. I mean,
Yeah.
I have TikTok and you can also message me on Facebook, but I have a very, 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 very strong filter of who I work with and the kind of mindset and the kind of people I want to work with.
Yeah. No losers.
Pretty
uh,
much.
yeah. Cool, man. Well, awesome, draw. This is fine. Talk about some good stuff. So hopefully people that watch it get some value. I know I did.
Yeah, hopefully you get something out of this. But thanks very much for having me on, Ben. I really appreciate it, and see you guys around.
So yeah.